Okay, if you've ever thought wordplay was just, a superficial trick or a cheap laugh, you might want to think again. Today, we're unpacking an incredibly fascinating module that treats jokes and ambiguity not as gimmicks, but as the actual foundational building blocks of human language. We aren't just looking at jokes today, we're diving into a real curriculum designed to teach the deep structural mechanics of linguistics. And honestly, this explainer is going to completely change your perspective on how language is built from the ground up and how we actually extract meaning from the things left unsaid. So, puns as the new language. This bold, provocative phrase is the core thesis of the source material we're exploring today, and it completely reframes how we perceive humor and meaning. It literally elevates the humble pun from a simple comedic device to a primary, highly sophisticated method of human communication. This idea asks us to consider what happens when we treat ambiguity not as a mistake in language or a failure to be clear, but as its absolute most powerful feature. Because when language is intentionally layered, we aren't just communicating a single thought, we're transmitting a complex web of ideas all at the exact same time. All right, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to start with puns as the new language, lay down the foundational theories, and then dive straight into applied pun concepts and puns in specific contexts. Let's jump right in. Part 1, puns as the new language, giving us an introduction to this whole module. Moving right along to part 2, the foundational theories, or the building blocks of wordplay. So naturally, the curriculum has to start by establishing a baseline, right? It ensures participants understand the actual mechanics of the pun itself before diving into the complex linguistic psychology. The module basically treats the pun as the ultimate gateway concept. Mechanically speaking, a pun forces two totally different meanings to occupy the exact same phonetic or grammatical space. Whether it's exploiting words that sound identical but mean different things, or just a single word holding multiple dictionary definitions, the pun introduces you to the reality that language is inherently unstable. By mastering how to intentionally destabilize a sentence, you really begin to understand the architectural load-bearing walls of communication. Now, this perfectly illustrates the central tension that actually makes language work. We've got the deliberate use of ambiguity clashing right up against what's known as relevance theory. So relevance theory is this vital cognitive concept proposing that our brains are fundamentally wired to find the most contextually appropriate meaning with the least amount of cognitive effort. We just assume a speaker is trying to be relevant, so our brains instantly jump to the most logical conclusion. Ambiguity, on the other hand, is the intentional disruption of that exact process. By injecting ambiguity, a speaker forces the listener's brain to hit a roadblock, backtrack, and expend extra cognitive effort to find that secondary meaning. You know that sudden click when your brain solves the puzzle? That cognitive friction is exactly what we experience as humor, surprise, or a profound realization. All right, let's see how this actually plays out. Part 3, Applied Pun Concepts, taking us from theory to practice. The curriculum actually breaks this down into 5 highly specific, real-world applications where this cognitive friction is deliberately deployed. We're talking advertising, nonsense, context, sexual innuendo, and dual meanings. So we're moving away from abstract theory into a really clinical breakdown of how language is manipulated across different mediums. This is where we see exactly how that tension between ambiguity and relevance theory is used to actively steer human attention. Interestingly, the source specifically highlights pins in advertising, and yes, it retains that exact spelling. It demonstrates how commercial messaging actively leverages this architectural linguistic technique. Now, whether that specific spelling is a documented variation of puns or just a deliberate structural choice to illustrate pinning a consumer's attention, the mechanism itself is brilliantly effective. Think about a commercial slogan with a double meaning for a second. Advertising completely relies on capturing your attention in a very noisy world. So by using an ambiguous phrase, an advertisement forces your brain's relevance theory machinery to pause and solve the linguistic puzzle. That split second of extra processing time, it makes the advertisement stickier. You didn't just passively read a billboard, your brain actively interacted with it, making the brand deeply memorable. Now you might be wondering, how does a curriculum built entirely on relevance theory handle something like nonsense puns? Well, if relevance theory dictates that our brains desperately search for logical meaning and patterns, nonsense acts as a deliberate short circuit. When you're presented with a nonsense pun, your cognitive machinery spins up, trying to force relevance onto total gibberish based purely on phonetic familiarity. The failure to find a logical resolution subverts our expectations so thoroughly that the resulting cognitive friction is literally the joke itself. It forces you to analyze the structural rules of language precisely at the moment those rules are being broken, which really highlights our brain's relentless, almost absurd need to make sense of the world. Which brings us to our final section, Part 4, Puns in Specific Contexts, looking at nuance and multiplicity.
The text makes it explicitly clear here puns and context are intimately linked within this syllabus. Basically, the environment you're in dictates whether the linguistic architecture succeeds. You can have the absolute most perfectly constructed ambiguous sentence in the world, but it relies entirely on the listener's surroundings to frame it. Think about a joke involving the word strikes. That word activates a completely different set of baseline assumptions if you're in a bowling alley compared to, say, a labor union meeting. Context is the scaffolding that relevance theory climbs on. Without the correct environmental scaffolding, the brain just can't calculate the secondary meaning, and the whole architectural structure of the joke collapses. Look at how the curriculum juxtaposes puns and sexual innuendo directly alongside puns with two communicated meanings. An innuendo is essentially the ultimate high-stakes test case for this linguistic architecture. In an innuendo, the primary meaning is completely innocent, while the secondary, unsaid meaning is risque or taboo. This requires incredible precision. The speaker is relying entirely on the listener applying relevance theory in real time, reading social cues, tone, and context to catch that hidden track. If the architecture fails, the meaning is lost. But if it succeeds, two people communicate a secret truth in plain sight. It's a masterful demonstration of a single statement transmitting dual realities simultaneously. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this somewhat provocative thought on how relevance, context, and dual meanings combine to make puns the actual new language. The next time you laugh at a pun or catch a really subtle innuendo, ask yourself, are you just reacting to a fleeting joke, or are you briefly glimpsing the hidden, highly structured blueprints of human thought? Language isn't just a tool for stating facts, it's an architecture of layered truths. Thank you so much for diving into this breakdown with me today. Keep looking for those hidden structures right inside the words we use every single day.